Welcome back to our Letting Go series, a deeper dive into this vital third domain of core resilience, which is the life, light, and possibilities we unleash when we achieve an equilibrium of vibrant health. And as we've been discussing in this series, by letting go, we're creating space for healing. By removing all the obstacles to it, the toxins, irritants, negative energy, distractions, distortions in our thinking, and the trauma, all those things that keep us stuck in our status quo, which may be an unsustainable equilibrium of illness, suffering, low energy, pain, or lackluster existence. These are all the things we want to change, right? We feel our deep desire to change, and we may see all the possibilities, but we stay stuck and frustrated, and we don't know what to do. So I hope I've inspired some meaningful direction for change and healing by helping you explore the environmental toxins and food irritants that can keep our biology stuck in an equilibrium of suffering and illness, and by showing you how the negative energy of emotionally toxic people, excessive distraction, or clutter can hijack our energy, attention, and creative energy. You can explore all of these in the previous two short videos in our Healing Life series on YouTube. Today, we land in our minds. As my teacher, Gabor Mate, says, it all goes down in your mind. Absolutely everything. Our minds are so powerful. They're amazing. And they can keep us stuck right where we are, barely treading water sometimes. They can also free us for the magnificent possibilities, the miracles of our lives. So yes, our minds. How do we do all that? It's through the stories we tell, right? Stories. We can also call them narratives or beliefs or how it is or how it should be or how we understand things to be or it's always been this way. Stories are the sole function of our minds to size up our worlds, all the events of our lives, everything we've ever been told, everything that's ever happened to us, and encapsulate all this into stories. We're storytelling creatures. Our minds weave stories continuously to make sense out of our experiences. There are also stories we are taught from our families, our culture, our teachers, our friends, our enemies, from art and music and books, from the laps of our parents and grandparents. We all know these. And there are unconscious stories we create to survive our earliest childhood experiences when our deepest essence was reflected back to us from our caregivers. This is how we formed our first notions of who we were thought to be, our value and lovability, our safety and belongingness. Many of us were told stories that held us in safety and love and compassion and brilliance. We learned our magnificence and our true potential. While others of us received different messages, we encountered the many wounds of our parents and ancestors. We may have had to choose between being our true core selves and being taken care of in the foundational ways that children must be to survive. Many of us chose connection over our own authenticity. And we told stories to justify the unconscious decision to do so, like, good girls behave this way. My value is in what I do for others. I'm safest when I'm quiet and small. My value is in how my accomplishments please my parents, and so on. And we all have these. But stories are just that, they're stories. None of them are exactly true. When do we ever have all the facts? And many of our stories disempower us today, though they may have served our survival at one time. So our call is twofold: to understand what stories are, just stories, often built on assumptions that aren't exactly true, and limited facts without a broader context, and to get the disempowering stories out of our way. So let's breathe into that. Okay, our call is to understand our storytelling nature, right? To be able to scrutinize our stories for their truest truth and to release those stories that hold us back. Everything we think we know or believe, no matter how foundational it feels, no matter how fiercely we believe it, we made up. We have perspectives to explain the facts of our lives, but not all the facts themselves. And we must be so humble and brave to acknowledge this truth. But there's also cause to celebrate. If they're just stories, we can reimagine them, all of them. We can honor how they held us, perhaps keeping us alive at one time. But now we're free to scrutinize all the facts, the non-facts, and the assumptions, which may not be true, that our stories are based on. We can welcome new facts, new sets of assumptions, and new stories that support us better, ennoble us, free us from the tyranny of the past, free us from false perceptions about our identities and our worth, and open us to our brilliant new present and future. So, what does it sound like to have a disempowering story stand in the way of your healing? I can't. I don't have time. Who am I to, you fill in the blank? It's too hard. It's too lonely. I'm just like my mother and grandmother. I'm stuck. I am my depression and anxiety. This is who I am. This is my genetic destiny. Endless, endless stories. Am I right? Today, we're going to look at 7 common foundational stories that we all tell that stand in the way of our healing and true potential as humans. These 7 stories are all about our unworthiness, our lack of power and personal agency, not having enough time, belonging, uncertainty and change, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, uncertainty and change. Yeah. What I believe for sure. What I believe for sure. And finally, last but not least, failure. Each one of these stories, as told in a disempowering way, hijacks our creative genius to imagine a better future. They misdirect our energy toward dead ends. These are the stories that keep us stuck. So we're going to explore each of these and how they show up for us. But the take home here is all about how to work with your own stories to get them out of the way of what you're trying to accomplish. This work begins not with rejecting them or making them wrong. No, this work begins with welcoming them with the deepest gratitude for how they've served us at one time, because they all have. But what we're doing now is assessing our stories for their present value. Do they ennoble and support us, or do they get in our way? I'd like to start with a life story of my own. This is a story that was so pervasive from my earliest years of life that it affected all the ways I operated in my life. I was so unconscious of it for a very long time. I didn't see it operating. I thought I was the story I told. My story was all about being unworthy and unlovable. Can you relate? I don't remember a time when I didn't understand myself this way until more recent years. It colored everything. It made me afraid and anxious. It made relationships feel risky. It made me work like a mad dog to bury my feelings and to rack up accomplishments to make me feel better about myself. Now, I married a man almost 30 years ago who saw the true me and loved me exactly how I was. He saw the me I couldn't. And this broke through so much of the muck of my story. And we had 2 incredible boys together. And these little boys adored me. And I could mother them in ways that I wasn't. This also helped me heal my old story. And then when my oldest son, Sean, was in high school, he was given the assignment to write an essay about one of his heroes. And when it was written, he came to us and he said, I couldn't think of just one, so I wrote about 2 heroes. The first one was his grandfather, my husband's dad. And this I so understood, because he grew up as a persecuted Catholic during the Troubles in a small town in Northern Ireland. And in spite of this, he became a world-renowned neurosurgeon who developed innovative techniques that saved the lives of people whose problems were considered hopeless. And he was a wonderful human being who was widely known and loved for his deep compassion, generosity, and incredible sense of humor. And he loved his children and his grandchildren. Sean had wonderful memories of him. So that one was obvious. Dr. Sean Mullen was indeed a hero. Then he said, and the other one is you, Mom. What? I was so shocked. I'm not sure I could say much at first. Really? Why? Because, he explained, and I'm sure there was a dumbass in there somewhere from my teenage son. Look at everything you went through growing up, all the obstacles you overcame, and how much you've accomplished in your life, Mom. Wow. He told my story in an entirely different way than I had ever imagined on my own, and I was totally stunned. His story was that I was a hero. Mine had always been that I was unworthy and unlovable. That's why the things that happened to me happened. Then my son shined a whole different light on the events of my life, and I realized I could cling to my old story, how I had defined myself for so many years, or I could open myself to the possibility that this young man with his own mind, who was free of all the biases and wounds that led me to my own conclusions, and who was brilliant and insightful, absolutely nailed it. And you know what? I let his story take me on a journey of reimagining my own past. Not a loser, but a savvy young girl who made her way in life at a very young age, did a freaking incredible job. A badass. not unlovable, just not attuned to in the ways a young child needs to experience themselves as worthwhile, lovable beings, but actually incredible and inherently gorgeously lovable, and not broken, but magnificently adapted emotionally for survival, even though it hurt so much. So these realizations came in a tsunami with my son's insight. I completely rewrote my story. I didn't make my old story wrong. It helped me survive at a very young age. But I acknowledged how it held me back and how I was ready to imagine and engage with a better story. So, the next steps: to accept 100% responsibility for myself and my healing. Blaming others for our experiences keeps us tethered to the past, and it hijacks our energy and our genius. And to practice my new story every day, which brings me to today's lessons. Okay, what stories do you tell that hold you back? Let's take a brief look at some of the common ones. So first, stories about our unworthiness. Now, obviously, the stories that undermine our true worth are those that get in our way the most. How does that happen? How do we fail to comprehend our how innately precious we are? Well, we're told incorrect stories, or we're exposed to verbal or physical violence or chaos as children that we interpret as being reflections of us, that we caused it. Or we create stories to account for abandonment or lack of attunement as children. Now, key to this is understanding the two primary needs of all humans: connection and authenticity. As you can imagine, being in the same room or house with someone is not the same as having them deeply attune to our emotions, to hold us in total compassion and safety, to reflect back to us our magnificent, valued, beautiful selves. As children, we need this deep level of attunement all the time, not just when our parents schedule time for it. And many of our parents were preoccupied with their own trauma. They were overwhelmed and highly stressed and didn't have a clue about meeting our needs. So this isn't about blame, okay? This is the deep connection that we need to understand ourselves as inherently worthy of our lives. So obviously, most of us have experienced wounds to our sense of self-worth. This follows us into adulthood. We tell ourselves stories like, who am I to? I don't deserve this. I must put the needs of others before my own. I must always say yes and never say no. I'm an imposter, and so forth. What is your unworthiness story, and how do you tell it? How does it show up for you? Whatever it is, don't make it wrong, okay? Hold your story and yourself in the deepest compassion and safety. Breathe space around your story as you welcome it into your body, perhaps for the very first time, right? So many of us reject these stories that make us suffer. Own your story and be relentlessly curious about it. Understand how your story of unworthiness kept you alive. It explained the facts to a very young mind who in some way was not attuned to, who missed out on connection. And for that, for how it helped you survive, express your gratitude. This shines a whole new light on your story and creates a whole new relationship between you and this story. And then consider, how can you tell a better story? One that more accurately reflects the truth of who you are. And one that supports you rather than holds you down and keeps you stuck. We know how a young mind would tell it, right? That's your current story. But how do you, as a more informed and savvy adult, tell it? Right? Like my son's hero story. Not unworthy, unlovable, or broken, but savvy, inherently gorgeously lovable, and magnificently adapted for survival. A total badass. Okay, what other stories do we tell? Our lack of personal power and agency. Why do we defer to the experts? Why do we let others tell us how it is? Why do we neglect our own internal wisdom, our gut feelings, our intuition? We're disconnected from ourselves. This is how my teacher Gabor Mate defines the experience of trauma, when we become disconnected from our true selves as a result of what happens to us. Therefore, trauma we experience within our families, institutions, our culture, disconnects us from ourselves. Then we lose our internal guidance system, our intuition, our inner wisdom, and our gut feelings. And we have no choice then but to defer to the so-called experts, to become totally dependent on outside sources to tell us what to do, to validate our choices, to tell us what's best for us, because we believe we can't do it ourselves. And this doesn't mean we don't ask others to help us or advise us, but we do it from a place of strength and internal resilience by trusting our intuition and gut feelings about what's best for us, landing us in our own driver's seat. Yes? So there are two things to do here. Recognize your internal resources and wisdom and practice them every day. And recognize your stories that put others in your driver's seat. How do we practice and strengthen our internal wisdom? Do this for me. Do this with me right now. Let's stand tall, feet hip distance apart. Place your hands on your hips. Engage your core. Tighten your butt and your abdomen. Pull your shoulders back. Let your scaps drop. Tuck your chin just a bit. Perfect alignment. Standing in your strength. And breathe deeply here. Stand in your strength and breathe. Be fully in present time and use your powerful words as you continue to breathe into the core of your body, your third chakra or emotional center, right here around your solar plexus. This is where we experience our personal power. This is our core, the core of resilience, where you create and experience the energy, strength, and adaptability that allows you to connect to yourself and engage with the world around you and your relationships and all of your life circumstances from a place of centered strength. And it's where you'll experience your gut feelings, the soft yet strong inner sensing of right or wrong, yes or no, or perhaps entire sentences about the truth of your situation and what to do. Practice this every day. Stand in your strength and listen to your gut. How do we recognize when we allow others to drive our ship, to tell us what to do even when it's at odds with our own gut feelings? How often do we take what our doctors say or the conventional dogma about our own situation and buy into it without question, even when it doesn't feel right, even when it suggests our personal outcomes are written in stone, never the truth, right? Like this: there's nothing more that can be done for me. I'm stuck with my suffering, dysfunction, and illness. I am diabetic. I am depressed. This is who I am. My doctor knows best. Well, it's in the medical literature or some authoritative source, so it must be true for me. I'm just like my mother and grandmother, this is my destiny. I'm trapped. These are stories. They do not contain all the facts. They contain facts that aren't true, like our genetics and our family history are not our destiny. Epigenetics, the 21st century science, has shown that our genes do not determine our destiny, our environments do. We have all kinds of control we used to not believe we had. But our culture, especially Western medicine, hasn't caught up. And these outdated, incorrect narratives are still widely prevalent. They don't support us or ennoble us. They don't take care of us. They don't tell the truth. Time to ditch them, period. Tell your new story and do the active reflection we did a few minutes ago. Stand in your power and tell yourself, I am filled to the brim with potential and the creative imagination to tap into it. Then find folks to work with who support your unlimited potential to heal. Okay, so moving on, next story. Not having enough time. Always a story, right? We always have time for what we care about. Go back to our exploration of distractions in the last video. Create more time by dropping the unnecessary habits and distractions that sap all your time. And you know what I'm talking about here. Social media rabbit holes, incessant email and text checking and responding, right? Multitasking, and anything that you do habitually that doesn't make you feel more alive. Set boundaries, create time. Okay, our next story is about belonging. We're wired to belong, but many of us traded our authenticity to protect our precious connections, right? As children, we did this as children. We became someone we weren't for approval, the good girl, the quiet girl, the helpful girl. And many of us do this as adults. We place others' needs before our own. We compromise and stretch ourselves so thin to please, to ensure our connections to others, to remain part of the pack, even when it might not be our pack. It's a pack to belong to all the same. And as adults for whom survival is not as fragile as it is for children or others living on the margins of safety, we're still wired to enjoy the bonds of our birth, allegiances, shared beliefs, and ways of living. And we enjoy our bonds with friends and coworkers. We gain strength belonging to a work community who collaborate, who share stories by the water cooler and burn the midnight oil together. We grow along with our partners at the gym. We cherish our traditions that bond us to family and close friends. It feels good. It feels comfortable. It feels safe. But our healing life asks us to make new choices. We must change the things we know need to be changed. But some of these healthier choices we claim for ourselves challenge our relationships. They inspire scrutiny and criticism, threatening these vital bonds. We may feel lonely and scared as we bravely take a stand for our own healing. This is one of the tests of our healing life. To whom do we belong? What happens when we become well? How does our vibrant new energy, happiness, or ideal body weight affect our relationships? Will our friends and family support us and cheer us on? Or will we get backlash from their misplaced jealousy, anger, or their own feelings of abandonment? But while these feelings are entirely normal, they're not our whole story. We're also strong and brave. Our healing calls us to belong to ourselves. This means activating that strong center like we did just a bit ago. And the outcome? Eventually, we learn that loneliness is temporary and it's not fatal. And the backlash of others is not personal. Any anxiety we have is just energy, and the rewards are eternal. And oh yeah, we end up showing others how it's done. So, okay, 3 more stories to go. And we're gonna slide through these a bit quickly. So first we have uncertainty and change, and we've explored this before. So what's up with change and the uncertainty of our outcomes? Why does this scare us and make us squirm? All change requires giving something up. There's always loss. No matter how bad something is for us, it's ours. It's comfortable. It's the way things have been. We can count on it. Maybe we've built our whole life around it. And maybe we bump up against, you got it, trauma. Maybe what we're used to but want to give up has served an important purpose. It's assuaged uncomfortable feelings. Feelings that come up because we've been traumatized. And our old habits have kept us comfortable, have numbed our pain, and kept us feeling safe. If that's you, you go to change and you find yourself resistant, scared, or anxious, you're bumping into trauma. And that's perfectly normal. Don't make it wrong. Have compassion for it. Welcome the feelings rather than reject them. If you know you need to change that old habit or addiction, work on the trauma first. Get someone to help you navigate the pain, put it into perspective, and heal at the deepest level. Or hang on till our next video. We're going to work on a self-practice for navigating and healing trauma called compassionate inquiry. And how about the story of what we believe for sure? When you have strong opinions, beliefs, or judgments, which we all do, you're dealing with a story that's tinged with survival elements. These are not gut feelings or intuition. And let me ask you this. What's the difference between gut feelings and strong emotions? Gut feelings are always true. They're accessible to someone who is connected to themselves. Gut feelings are calm. They give us guidance about external situations. We need them for survival, but they do not arrive as strong emotions, opinions, or judgments. Okay? Whereas strong emotions are responses to triggering events. That is, they trigger biological and emotional trauma responses. They feel powerful. They arrive with intensity, drama, indignation, disturbance, or agitation. They're often quick to judge, blame, or criticize. So check in with yourself about what you believe you know for sure. Is it calm? Gut feelings. Is it intense, dramatic, or agitated? Strong emotions linked to trauma, 100% of the time. Strong emotions ask us to be present to them, not make them wrong, but claim 100% responsibility for them as ours. Okay? A common example for 2022 is how we feel about COVID vaccines. More to the point, how we feel about people who are vaccinated versus not vaccinated. It's one thing to have a clear point of view based on one's interpretation of the data. That's perfectly fine. But strong judging feelings, outrage, defensiveness, those are always strong emotions triggered by trauma 100% of the time. If we all owned that, it'd be a way more peaceful world. And finally, and this one is just as hard as all the others, the story of failure. Okay? Failure is 100% every time, without fail, a story. It is purely a perception of how things played out. One person's failure is another person's experiment that didn't go exactly as planned. That led to incredible insights and success. Failure is, in essence, when things don't go as planned. And when this happens, one of three things is usually true. There's something we need to learn, there's something else we need to do first, or what we planned is just not meant to be. And notice how these three reasons have no emotion tied to them. We need to learn something, do something first, or it's not meant to be, period. Now, let me read you something that sums this all up in a very gorgeous way, I feel. And you've all heard this before. These are the words of Theodore Roosevelt in one of the most widely quoted speeches of all time called Citizenship in a Republic, delivered on April 23, 1910 in Paris, France. He railed against a trend of cynics who looked down on people who were trying to make the world a better place. And it's become a mantra for many trying to live their best lives under challenging circumstances. And considering what you're trying to accomplish in your life by being here, doing this work, in dealing with the inevitable setbacks, in dealing with the people around you who may not be as supportive as they could, I think Roosevelt's words apply. So how we take care of ourselves is how we take care of our world. And how we mine our stories to heal ourselves is how we change the cultural narratives that hold the world back. This precious gift of life, ours, of those around us, of the planet, is in our care. Making ourselves better will make the world better, flaws and all, mistakes and all. So be strong, stay centered, and when you fall, stand proudly up. Brush yourself off and think of this quote and smile. And I've taken the liberty of taking all the gender references out. And I think Roosevelt would approve. And note that this message applies to all of us, male, female, LGBTQ, black, white, and every shade of the rainbow. So feel free to insert your own pronouns here. It is not the critic who counts, not the one who points out how the strong person stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the one who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasm, the great devotions, who spends themselves in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if they fail, at least fails while daring greatly, so that their place shall never be with those cold, timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Thank you for spending this time with me. I will see you in our next video in which we explore a self-guided practice for healing our own trauma, a necessary part of letting go and guiding ourselves more deeply into healing and core resilience. Until then, please be well, go in self-compassion and peace, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Thank you.